Well, thanks a lot for staying with us here on Sunrise Live on E! This Tuesday morning. Now, in the midst of all the uncertainty surrounding our local currency, the rand has strengthened to just below 13 rand to the dollar. And of course, yesterday we saw it go just under 13 rand to about 12.80 to 90 to the dollar. And President Jacob Zuma's midnight cabinet reshuffle on the 31st of March saw former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan as well as his deputy Mcebisi Jonas being removed from their positions. So joining us to talk about where we're currently sitting economically in the country as well as the outlook of our currency, we're joined by KPMG Chief Economist Lulu Krugel. And of course, we invite you at home as always to be part of our conversation. Remember, you can leave those comments on our Facebook as well as our Twitter pages. Lulu, thanks a lot for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Faith. Thanks.
And I must say that South Africans were quite optimistic. So I was actually following the currency yesterday, and it was so, I think it was really a great moment for anybody that has been the negative predictor of the currency to see it go just under 13 rand to the dollar yesterday. I think it closed in about 12 rand 80, 12 rand 90.
Yes, absolutely. I think that was, it was absolutely fantastic news from an inflation perspective, because that's something that we've been worrying about. Inflation ticking up again if the rand starts to depreciate. So that's good news. And all around, it maybe signals that, we might be in a slightly better position than we think we are. It has been mostly driven by what has been happening in France and in the Euro area, with the current presidential candidate. The more centralist presidential candidate looks like he's going to win, which means that France will probably stay in the EU because he's pro-EU, and that of course meant that the euro strengthened against the dollar and subsequently the rand also strengthened. And also I think the other thing that we're seeing is that a lot of this noise has been priced into the currency for the last couple of months. We've seen the depreciation already. The market's been expecting it.
Okay, I love the fact that you say that a lot of this noise has been priced into the currency for the last couple of months, because you and I were speaking off air about how when there were sort of cries for a downgrade, and then it was, okay, the downgrade, we're not going to be able to actually go past the downgrade, and because we're on junk status, many analysts were saying that we could even go down to about 20 rand to the US dollar. You're saying now that actually this downgrade was factored in by the markets anyways, long before we actually had the downgrade to junk status.
It looks like it. We've analyzed the numbers over the last couple of, well, actually since 2015, and the same goes for the bond yields. And if you look at other markets, a similar thing has happened. And it looks like mostly, by the time that the announcements are made, everybody's thinking that it will happen in any event. And we've been talking about it, so the market's already decided it's coming, so we're pricing it in. So hopefully we've seen the worst for now, and we can.
But this raises the next question of, if the markets had already factored in the downgrade to junk status, why was there such a noise made about junk status and about the downgrade in itself? And number two, who were those noisemakers? Because it appears as though the noisemakers were instilling fear in South Africans regarding the state of our economy. And as a result of that, this is obviously following that midnight cabinet reshuffle. And as a result of that, sent the country into a panic, when you're saying now that actually they had already factored in the fact that there was going to be a downgrade in the first place. So who were the noisemakers, and why did they make so much noise about it to scare South Africans?
Okay, so I must be honest with you, it's not good news that we were downgraded to junk. And if you do look at what happened to the currency, it did appreciate. Our debt has become more expensive, but it happened already a couple of months ago. So it's not to say that the downgrade hasn't had an impact. It has had an impact, and it's still having an impact, and it will probably have an impact as in months to come. What I'm trying to say is, a lot of that we've seen already. It's not to say that it would necessarily become that much worse in terms of the currency and in terms of the bond yields. So it's not to say that if we could avoid it, it could have had a positive impact on bond yields. It could have had a positive impact even further on the currency. It's just that, the markets have already been trading as if it has happened. So yes, there has been a lot of noise, and obviously it's not a good thing that has happened, but it's also, I think we should also just take a breather and realize it's not the end of the world either. There's some pretty big countries that has been in a similar position, and that currently is in the same position. Norway, UK, Ireland, Portugal, Spain, Hungary, India, Russia. They've all been jug status at some stage or another. Some of them have gotten out of it, and quite frankly, you know, we've seen some economic activity in Russia because people are also looking at it and realizing, yes, my risk is more, but there's also potential returns that we can look at.
And of course, I mean, we're looking at where the finance minister is currently with his tour to Washington, trying to convince ratings agencies to not perhaps go with the next downgrade. And obviously, we're expecting that announcement by Moody's sometime next month.
Yes.
As a result of that, there were some reports saying that it actually failed to convince the ratings agencies regarding to keep South Africa at the current rating that it's at, that unfortunately they will follow suit when it comes to Standard & Poor's as well as the Fitch downgrade.
So typically we see Fitch move first, and then Standard & Poor's, and then Moody's. They always tend to do it in that order when there's downgrades. Okay. And then the other way around, if they start upgrading our situation again. We must remember, however, that Moody's has us two notches above junk. So if they do downgrade us one notch, we're still above junk status, yes. So, but unfortunately, the other two having us at junk means that we have dropped out of certain of the indices, and certain investors are not looking at South Africa's bond market at the moment.
Let me ask you this question. Yeah. Are investors, because this is going to be a word that is going to be used, whether it's for political posturing, whether it's for some form of presidential gain, however, it is a word and it's a term that we cannot avoid at this stage in South African politics. Radical economic transformation. And my question to you then would be, are investors really afraid of this radical economic transformation, or is it that there are businesses who simply don't want to transform in a 2017 era in South Africa and would rather have a situation where they predict almost the downfall of the private sector should we assume that kind of a very extreme economic policy?
I think the biggest concern for investors is uncertainty. So no matter which direction you take, investors like to know what they're getting themselves into. Yeah. And with country's policy, investors are perfectly okay to work within that parameters if they get the returns that they want. But they want to know what's going to happen.
So it's the bottom line, ultimately.
Yes. Tell us what you mean by it. Tell us what you mean by economic transformation. Tell us what it means for business. And then we'll make a decision whether or not it will still be worthwhile for us, if we will get the returns that we want. But uncertainty is actually the thing that is killing investment.
So basically, if radical economic transformation is a policy that obviously we want to drive forward, or it's been seen to be wanting to be driven forward by various government agencies, etc., and the investor knows that, look, even though the person that's going to be at the helm is not necessarily someone who's either a previously white owner or is now a black owner, as long as I get my return on investment and I know that the country is in a stable position,
exactly,
I'm fine to invest.
Exactly.
Why are we scaring people then, Lulu?
Well,
why are reports scaring people?
Uncertainty, because people don't know. At the end of the day, it's about us not knowing at the moment what is going to be in that policy. I think as South Africans also, we have to realize, and even as South African businesses, if you speak to business people, they do realize that South Africa is not America or somewhere else. You know, we're sitting with massive an inequality in our society, and it's something that's also not sustainable for business. So they do realize that things need to change, and that we need to work in that space and to be a successful business. But at the end of the day, business and investors want to know, what direction will you take, and will it be still worthwhile for us? Will we get the returns that we would like to see in this environment?
And speaking about returns, gosh, it's the return of the increased petrol price. So it's set to go up by about 51 cents a litre from next month?
Yes. So the biggest impact there is the depreciation that we've seen in the rand.
Gotcha.
And then there's been some slight increases in the international price. But, you know, with the petrol price, there's the two main factors, the rand and the oil prices driving that. And depending on where that goes, it's up and down from the 1 month to the next. When is it going to go down again? Well, I think this strengthening that we're seeing in the rand could potentially mean that we might see a lower petrol price in about 2 months' time.